This true crime story is about Lindsay Shiver, the former Dothan, Alabama beauty queen and Auburn University cheerleader, who married her college sweetheart, Robert Shiver, a standout Auburn football player who went on to play in the NFL as a long snapper for the Atlanta Falcons. Together, they built a life that looked picture perfect from the outside, complete with 3 young children, a home in Thomasville, Georgia, and regular getaways to their property in the Bahamas. Yet, behind that facade, a bitter divorce filled in the early 2023 turned their world upside down, with mutual accusations of infidelity and cruel treatment that escalated into something far more dangerous. As a licensed professional counselor since 2007, still powered by coffee and full-time client sessions every single day, because retirement clearly is not calling my name just yet. I have spent years helping people navigate the emotional fallout of relationships falling apart. Everything that I share here is purely my speculations. It's not based on any type of diagnosis of anyone involved. There's no judgment at anyone here, just an effort to trace the psychological patterns that sometimes get missed until it's too late. Before we get any further into the story, if you're looking for more mental health insights and practical tools delivered straight to your inbox to help build your stronger emotional resilience in your own life, go ahead and sign up for my newsletter, The Mental Freedom. It's completely free, and the link is right there in the description. And I promise I will give you real strategies without the therapy bill. Another case, another clinical file. Yes, 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 yes. Lindsay Shiver's trial on charges of conspiracy to commit murder has been delayed yet again, now rescheduled for June 3rd. That means nearly 3 full years have passed since the authorities say she sent messages that changed everything, and her family, including her 3 children, is still waiting for closure while she remains out on bond with strict conditions. The wait itself adds another layer to the psychological strain that everyone that's involved has endured, because prolonged uncertainty like this can heighten feelings of helplessness on all sides. What makes this case stand out is the way the alleged plot unfolded during what should have been a relaxing family vacation in the Bahamas. By July 2023, the divorce was already bitterly contentious. Robert had first filed, citing Lindsay's alleged adulterous conduct, and she responded with claims of physical and mental cruel treatment. Reports indicate both sides felt betrayed, and the custody battle over their children intensified the emotional stakes. In that environment, Lindsay reportedly began an affair with a local bartender in his late 20s. That relationship, according to the authorities, became the backdrop for the messages that later surfaced. On July 16th, after yet another heated argument about travel plans, Robert was seen at the local bar with another woman. Someone snapped photos, and those images somehow made it their way all the way to Lindsay. Moments later, she sent a WhatsApp group chat that included Terrence Bethel and his friend Farron Newborn Jr. The message contained the photos along with 2 stark words, "Kill him," in quotes. 5 days later, on July 21st, Bohemian police arrested Lindsay, Bethel, and Newborn on charges of conspiracy to commit murder. The discovery was almost accidental. Officers had been investigating an unrelated break-in at the bar where Bethel worked, and when they searched connected phones, they stumbled across the exchange. It's one of those ironic twists where a seemingly unrelated crime investigation ends up exposing something much larger. From a psychological perspective, that direct text stands as a potential red flag for impulsivity under extreme emotional pressure. When someone feels the ground shifting beneath them in a divorce, especially if they perceive the other person as moving on quickly, it can trigger what looks like a sudden loss of emotional control. In Lindsay's reported behavior in the months leading up to this, we see echoes of that pattern. Multiple 911 calls from the family between February and July 2023 paint a picture of escalating tensions at home. Robert called police in February because Lindsay had cut off his cell phone service and he worried about confrontation. In April, strange deliveries of USB drives containing photos of Lindsay arrived at his office and his parents' home. On April 13th, Lindsay followed her mother-in-law's Robin's car, leading to Robin's frantic call describing Lindsay's actions as erratic and saying she was not well. Robert himself told dispatchers that Lindsay's own mother had suggested taking her to the emergency room or checking her into a mental institution because she appeared to be living some kind of midlife crisis mental breakdown. He called her a super unstable in that moment. These incidents, viewed through a clinical lens, could reflect emotional dysregulation, where intense feelings of rejection or loss overwhelm a person's ability to pause and choose a measured response. The divorce itself may have activated deep-seated fears of abandonment, especially for someone who had built an identity around a certain lifestyle and family image. And when that image starts to crack, the brain can respond with what feels like survivor mode. And sometimes that mode includes lashing out in ways that seem completely out of character to outsiders. Lindsay's alleged decision to involve others in such a direct manner also hints at possible compartmentalization, the psychological defense where a person separates conflicting parts of their life so thoroughly that one side does not even seem real. Here she was navigating motherhood, a public divorce, and a secret affair, all while the custody battle loomed. That kind of mental juggling can erode judgment over time. The motive from everything reported appears tied to a mix of jealousy, financial security concerns, and the raw pain of seeing Robert begin a new chapter publicly with the reality television star Savannah Chrisley. When someone experiences what psychologists call a narcissistic injury, a profound wound to their sense of self triggered by a rejection or public humiliation, their response can escalate beyond reason. Lindsay had enjoyed the status of stability of their marriage, and a divorce threatened to end it all. That timing of this message, right after learning about Robert with another woman, suggests a reactive aggression fueled by that injury. It's as if the brain short-circuited and jumped straight to elimination as a way to restore control. Of course, we can't know her internal experience, but the pattern of reported behaviors leading up to July 16th, combined with the bluntness of the text, fits with how unresolved abandonment fears and entitlement from a long-established lifestyle can collide under stress. This case carries an uncomfortable parallel to the Delia DiLapido situation back in 2009 in Florida. There, a woman entangled in personal turmoil and an affair allegedly orchestrated a hit on her husband so she could start fresh with a new life and the insurance payout. In that instance, too, the plot stemmed from resentment, a desire to regain control, and the belief that removing the spouse would solve everything. The similarities in motive, the involvement of someone outside of the marriage, and the eventual unraveling through evidence left behind highlight how certain psychological pressures and high-conflict divorces can push people toward the same desperate thinking, regardless of the background. What strikes me most about Lindsay's alleged choices is the overconfidence that seems to run through them. Sending such an explicit directive in a group chat on an app that leaves a permanent digital trail is the kind of move that suggests someone might have underestimated how easily authorities could connect the dots. It's another reminder that confidence and competence don't always travel together, especially when emotions are running high. The plan appeared to rely on an oppressive level of optimism regarding forensic science and the idea that no one would ever look at those phones. After the arrest, Lindsay was released on bond in August 2023 with conditions that included no contact with Robert or her co-defendants except for the children. Yet even then, further complications arose when she and Bethel appeared on national television in 2024, which led to their bonds being revoked temporarily because it violated pretrial publicity rules. That decision to speak out publicly while wearing a GPS monitor could reflect a continued pattern of minimalization or poor judgment under pressure. She later requested the ankle monitor to be removed so she could pursue modeling and influencer work, citing the emotional and financial toll it took. These post-arrest steps add another layer to the psychological picture, showing how someone might continue to push boundaries even when those stakes are clear. If this breakdown of the alleged behaviors has you pausing to think about how quickly a relationship can shift from love to something darker, then hit subscribe before I start profiling my own family dinners next. Kidding, mostly. Subscribe so we can keep investigating these psychological puzzles together. No badge required. As the case heads towards its delayed trial, the family's earlier 911 calls take on even more weight. Those documented moments of erratic behavior and threats were not isolated. They formed a timeline of mounting distress that culminated in the Bahamas. From a mental health standpoint, the divorce likely amplified any underlying attachment insecurities, turning perceived rejection into a catalyst for extreme action. The why here feels rooted in that perfect storm of loss aversion, jealousy, and a desperate bid to reclaim stability. People sometimes overestimate how invisible they become when they act in the heat of the moment, and the digital footprint in this case was, to put it mildly, enthusiastic. Later in the story, after Lindsay's release on bond, reports surfaced of her filing a protection order against a subsequent boyfriend who was charged with strangulation in 2024. That development does not excuse or explain the earlier allegations, but it does illustrate how the ripple effects of trauma and instability can continue long after the initial crisis. It serves as a stark reminder that unresolved psychological wounds rarely stay contained to one chapter of life. Here are some of the mental health indicators that I explored today, each explained in the context of reported behaviors. Emotional dysregulation is the inability to effectively manage and respond to intense emotions in a balanced way, often resulting in impulsive or extreme actions during high-stakes stress, like a divorce. Rejection sensitivity. It refers to a heightened emotional response to perceived criticism or abandonment that can fuel disproportionate reactions. Narcissistic injury describes a deep psychological wound to one's self-image, triggered by a rejection of public humiliation, which can escalate into rage or desperate attempts to regain control. Impulsivity is acting on urges without considering long-term consequences, especially when emotions override rational thought. Compartmentalization is the defense mechanism of mentally separating conflicting aspects of life so thoroughly that one side feels disconnected from reality. Reactive aggression involves aggressive responses triggered by immediate threats to self-esteem or security, rather than premeditated planning. There's so many elements to this case over so many years. The true victims here are the kids. They're always caught in the middle. It's a tragic story here of behavior, of impulsivity, as we had talked about. So what did you think about this case with Lindsay and her husband, Robert? Were there any of the mental health patterns or psychological dynamics that maybe I missed that you see? Let me know in the comments. And that, my friends, closes another clinical file. Until next time, keep looking a little deeper, stay curious, and stay safe. Meanwhile, I'll be over here profiling my own coffee choices until the next file opens. I really need to come up with some different one-liners.